Chapter 527, A Quick Battle. Just as he leaped out of the flames, the 2 points of light in the eyes of Klein, who wore golden gloves on his left hand, enlarged in size and changed from dark to bright, as if they were lightning that suddenly cut across the sky. After distracting Steel Mavetti and company's attention with paper figurine substitutes, he had activated Creeping Hunger and switched to the interrogator's soul. He planned on using the psychic piercing Beyonder power. Ah! Steel Mavetti suddenly cried out miserably. It was as if someone had stabbed a knife into his head, stirring his grayish-white brain. A feeling of pain came from the depths of his soul, instantly occupying his mind. At the same time, his Beyonder powers erupted from the irritation and turned into a hurricane that spread out in all directions. Suddenly, beautiful snowflakes began to fall from the sky. Layers of translucent ice began spreading outwards, and the trees on both sides of the road were covered with white edges. They withered quickly, revealing traces of decay. The lingering resentment of the remnant spirits was successively awakened. They sobbed, wailed, and shrieked, causing the nearby area to be dyed with a gray and repressed color. Klein naturally descended from the sky, his left glove shining like the sun. He opened his arms and leaned back as if embracing something. Just as his heels touched the cold ground, a pure, blazing, thick pillar of light descended from above. This holy radiance enveloped Steel Mavetti, illuminating his dark skin, firm muscles, and steel ball-like curly hair. Priest of light, light of holiness. Without a sound, Mavetti's expression became even more twisted, and his skin began to show signs of melting. At this moment, he was like a candle that had been thrown into a burning fireplace. Compared to the corrupted Bishop Millet, as a zombie, he was weaker towards such attacks. The damage he took was even more serious. The snowflakes stopped falling, and the ice on the ground quickly melted. The trees that had white edges revealed their brown colors. There was no doubt that the powerful beam of light had caught the attention of Blood Brambles Hendry and Squall. The former's expression changed as he reached into his secret pocket and pulled out materials casting magic. He planned to use his terrain advantage to save Steel Mavetti. At this moment, a raven made purely out of flames suddenly appeared before his eyes. 1, 2, 3, countless fire ravens filled Hendry's field of vision like crimson stars. They flew over from all directions, flapping their wings in a dense, scorching hot formation. Hendry's heart skipped a beat as his gaze seemed to freeze. He immediately moved his hand elsewhere to grab another type of material. Whoosh! He scattered light blue powder on his body while he chanted in ancient Hermes, "Sea waves." The powder suddenly expanded and turned into dark blue waves that spread out in all directions. When they met the fire ravens, they made sizzling sounds and created a large amount of white fog. The fire wave from the previous explosion had subsided a little. Through the remnants of the crimson light, Squall saw that Steel Mavetti's skin was melting like wax and his flesh melted inch by inch. He saw the unfamiliar man in a black cloak standing next to him. He didn't panic. Like a cold-blooded viper who had lost its emotions, he calmly raised his arms and abruptly pressed both his palms down. In a split second, he saw the thin, grim-faced young man's body sink. His movements had turned slow, as though the wings he used for flying had been snapped. As for Steel Mavetti, he began to struggle and roll in order to avoid a second round of light of holiness. Immediately following that, Squall noticed that the man had lost his weight and thickness. Once again, he turned into a thin paper figurine, pressed to the ground by an invisible force before soaking into the mud that came as a result of the melting ice. Klein phased into existence from another position. He rubbed his right thumb and middle finger together and snapped his fingers 3 times as he rushed forward. Pa, pa, pa. The sunbird-shaped dark golden brooch in front of him flashed continuously as it added a purifying element to his air bullets. Bangs, bangs, bang. The 3 bullets connected at an extremely fast speed and hit the slow-moving Steel Mavetti in his right chest, penetrating his half-melted skin and flesh, creating an exaggerated, gruesome wound. Golden flames spread in all directions. Su, su, su. Squall tossed out scalpels after scalpels, but they were all dodged by Klein's deft, acrobatic maneuvers. At that moment, Steel Mavetti had gotten a breather. With a push of his palm, he stood up once again and charged straight at the enemy, fully displaying his advantage in close combat, as well as his abnormally strong body that could withstand powerful blows. Ice formed under his feet again, and his fists effused a rotting aura. Then, once again, he saw two bolts of lightning shoot out from Klein's dark brown eyes, shooting into his own. Steel Mavetti subconsciously raised his head and clenched his teeth. His nose, mouth, and ears were all leaking blood, adding to his previously melted skin. While shooting the air bullets, Klein had changed the soul he used for grazing. It was still Interrogator, and it was still psychic piercing. Against a Beyonder like a zombie, which had a body as tough as steel, dealing damage to the spirit body was far more effective. While the repeated strikes made Steel Mavetti's body stiffen for short periods of time, he lost the shackles of his reasoning. Black, firm hair grew from his face, one strand at a time, while his teeth and nails also constantly grew longer. His skin squirmed in a bid to coalesce, turning from black to white. He was like a real, crazy zombie who was thirsting for blood. Klein took this opportunity to close in. He bent his body and brushed past Steel Mavetti's shoulder. He then stuffed the item in his hand into the hideous wound that he had created into the man's body. It was a bottle with a few ordinary brass bullets, and inside it was a large amount of sun holy water that Klein had prepared in advance. Oof! Klein, who didn't stop, caused Squall's attempt to control him to fail again. With a twist of his heel, he moved behind Steel Mavetti, his back to him. Pow! He raised his right hand and snapped his fingers before Steel Mavetti could pull out the glass bottle. Bang! A light explosion rang out, and fiery crimson light soared, shattering the already fragile glass bottle. Large amounts of sun holy water inundated Steel Mavetti's body. The infamous pirate, with a bounty of 6,000 pounds, froze where he stood, his throat letting out an anguished groan. He plopped to his knees. A dark green gas in his body was pouring out and disappearing into the air. At the sight of this, Squall's eyes darkened. He immediately took out an iron-black charm and muttered a word in ancient Hermes, shriek. The charm suddenly cracked and vanished, completing the sacrifice. An invisible sound wave swept outwards like a tsunami, almost successively drilling into the ears of everyone around. Klein's mind buzzed, the tip of his nose cold. Blood oozed out, and Blood Bramble's Hendry on the flying carpet was in an even more miserable state. His face was twisted, and his body convulsed as he fell down, unable to even let out a tragic scream. On the contrary, Blazing Danitz, who was far away on a rooftop, wasn't subject to any effects. He happily threw out another blob of a highly compressed, incandescent fireball. The fireball landed on Hendry's body without any resistance and exploded with a loud boom. Flesh and blood splattered outwards. Flames wrapped around his fingers, calves, and head before he fell to the ground. The flying carpet then lost control and slowly settled down. Squall took the opportunity to turn around and run, not hesitating in the slightest. However, he was stunned to discover that the terrifying man, who had almost finished off Steel Mavetti within 10 seconds, didn't seem to show the slightest signs of being impeded. He had turned around and given chase. How is that possible? This is shriek charm created by Admiral. Squall had no time to think over the reasons. He ran as fast as he could down the other street. At that moment, his head was suddenly hit hard by someone. A tearing pain made his whole body spasm. The lightning in Klein's eyes faded as he raised his right hand and snapped his fingers once more. Bang! An air bullet crossed the distance of about 10 meters and accurately drilled into the back of Squall's head. Squall didn't have the non-human endurance that Steel had. His vision immediately blackened, and he slowly fell to the ground. Klein caught up with him in a few steps, reached out his left hand, and let the jubilant creeping hunger enjoy the meal. I have heard the voice of the true creator before, and I've experienced Mr. Door's call for help. I have great resistance in this aspect, and I can even quickly recover from the shrieking of a wraith, let alone a mere charm. Klein muttered silently to himself as he watched Squall's body be reduced to flesh and blood and plunge into the open mouth of creeping hunger. After a few seconds, creeping hunger came to a satisfied halt, and Klein quickly returned to steal Maveti's side. This zombie had been miserably purged. Although his head remained intact, he was already dead. Klein took a few steps forward, picked up the peacock blue flying carpet that had fallen to the ground, wrapped it around Steele's body, and lifted it. Glancing back at 15 Amyris Avenue, he listened to the commotion of rampaging zombies and puppets, and he sensed that the mandated punishers were approaching. Klein pulled his hood over his head, bowed slightly in that direction as a salute. "Pa." Klein rubbed his fingers, and all of the paper fragments around him were set ablaze, producing crimson-red columns of fire. Under the light of the fire, his body turned illusory, and he vanished from where he stood, with the items turning into a shadow. As for the beyonder characteristics of Squall and Hendry, which were slowly coming into existence, he didn't take a look, nor did he pay any attention to them. Greed would cause him to fall into unnecessary danger. Besides, the harvest he had reaped now was already sufficient. After leaving some of the mandated punishers to deal with the rampaging zombies and puppets, the pirates who had been damaged by his companions, and the beyonder adventurers who were caught, Cordoba Roy led the rest of the team and rushed over. However, all they saw were scattered corpses, scalpels, and withered trees on the streets. They could distinguish the receding aura of the sun, as well as the evil sensation that came from the depths of flesh and blood.